So Lena, did you say that you've been on? You just got back from a vacation?
Just got back from vacation. I'm European and I was back visiting family in Denmark, where I'm from.
Uh-huh.
And then we went to Italy for 2 weeks. So
Oh,
I cannot complain. I had a
oh
really
my
good
gosh,
time.
where in Italy did you get to go?
It was in Rome. We have some friends who have a small village, a small town, a small, his parents' house in a small town. It's called Frasso outside of Rome. And then we went through Tuscany and hit the coast as well and took the train back to Rome. So yes, we did it.
Oh man, it's on my list. I have never been. Well, I was when I was a baby. I was a little bitty
Oh,
baby in
okay.
Italy, so of course I remember nothing. But it's been on my
Yes.
list to go
Yeah.
back.
Yeah, we had a really good family trip like years ago with my family and my husband and I, my 2 kids. And during the pandemic, it was it came up again and again. It's like, oh, what was one of the best trips we had? And so it's like and that was that trip to Italy. So it's like, oh, we need to do that again. And kind of the combo, a big city, renting a little Fiat Punto, going around the countryside, but also being on the trains. The European trains are just great, right? And we have teens, so it's just fun to travel with them in that way.
Yeah, I can't wait with travel coming back. It's opening back up, and I mean, we just did a month remote, but coming. It's not the same as like a vacation, and we've been just trying to figure out where will we go. And Europe keeps coming up because we just miss it so much.
I know. Yeah. Well, I always miss it because it's my home continent. But yes, it was lovely to be back.
Nice. Well, welcome back. You ready to get started?
Yes, I am.
All right, here we go.
Welcome to the CXR channel, our premier podcast for talent acquisition and talent management. Listen in as the CXR community discusses a wide range of topics focused on attracting, engaging, and retaining the best talent. We're glad you're here.
Okay, welcome to today's edition of CXR Recruiting Community Podcast. Now, weekly, this is where we come together with recruiting industry leaders, practitioners, analysts, personalities, and friends just to kind of talk about what's going on, what's top of mind for them, and just to catch up live. Now, if you haven't already, please be sure to hit subscribe and like on our podcast show wherever you may be watching or listening. We broadcast on all of the major platforms like Spotify, iTunes, Amazon, and probably a few that you've never heard of. But we're also streaming on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube, and of course our own website at cxr.works/podcast. Now, those likes and subscribes are what drive the creation of more of these episodes. Our member leaders and your comments on those channels help to determine what the topics are and who we invite as a guest, which is why I'm pleased to introduce today's guest. And while it is her first time on our community podcast, it is not her first time in front of our members. Lena Morkbak is an expert in remote collaboration and productivity. She has contributed to countless sessions and even CEO Annette Dahl's book, Global Perspectives. And she is the founder and managing director of Global Leap Consulting and one of our most recent lecture series presenters. You can find more about that on cxr.works/lecture, by the way. But Lena, I want to go ahead and welcome you to the show. It's really great to see you again.
Thank you. And thanks for inviting me in. I think it came up after the lecture conversation back in May or something.
Mm-hmm.
And I was happy that you guys reached out. So thanks for inviting me.
Oh, it was immediate. I mean, it was the response we got from our members because the topic was remote 3.0, right? This work piece that we're all sort of struggling with. And it was immediate because people were like, more. We need some more of that or some more information. So it's just fantastic. Lena, before we really jump in, why don't you kind of give everyone a little bit of sort of, I like to call an escalator pitch of who you are and what you do and why people should, why people should be paying attention to you.
Okay, well, my name is Lena Morkbak, and you can see by my name that even though I'm joining from the west coast of the US, I'm not American. I do live in the US with my family, but I'm originally from Denmark. I'm Danish, lived in Europe for a lot of my career, but I run my own business, which is called Global Leap Consulting, where I'm supporting international teams collaborate together. And that collaboration very, very often happens in a remote space. I've been doing remote work for 15, 16 years. So a long time before there was any COVID words and bugs in the world. And been helping people to connect, build their team, build that rapport with each other, and feel that you get a sense of team, even if you're not get a chance to be in the same office every day.
Yeah. Well, it's funny you mentioned that, Lena, because one of the things I wanted to ask you, you've obviously been doing this type of work, right? This collaboration and workspace thought leadership for quite some time, long before the pandemic ever rolled around, right? Before, what'd you say, before there were these bugs floating around. So in the last 2 years, is there anything that has really stood out to you? Because you've been doing it long before that, this emergence, this crazy phenomena of hybrid work and remote work. Is there anything that really stands out to you that you've sort of watched happen in the last couple of years?
Oh, yes. I think two things really stand out. First of all, people's curiosity and appetite. Many of us who've done this for a long time have been for years and years saying, okay, you can do this. Okay, you don't have to send people across the world on crazy travel budget all the time.
Right.
You could do an offsite where we come together hybrid, or we come together remote, and I'll happy to design it for you and create that space. And of course I did a lot of that, but it was a high, sometimes it was hard to sell, and it was hard to convince people. And of course what happened with the pandemic was people, they had to listen, they had to do it, and a lot of them experienced themselves, which was great to see, because yes, I got pulled in as an expert for a lot of things, but a lot of this doesn't always need the experts. A lot of it is also like mess around with it with yourself, try and find out what is your style to have a conversation. Are you already facilitating meetings, facilitating workshops? How do you do that, and how do you then want to do that online? So that would say that was one thing that really has been wonderful to see, that people's curiosity and appetite have been enlivened and kind of kickstarted. So it's great to see, okay, we're not having conversations on like, how do I turn on Zoom, but really like, oh, how do I also share my music? What kind of whiteboard is your favorite? What's these other tools we can use? So that's one thing that I would say. Another thing is something that those of us who've done this work for a long time also know, is that we really have to be very careful when we work online and remote to manage our own time. Because we can end up overworking ourselves, getting burned out, because we can always be on, and oh, it's okay, I can have my nice shirt up here and I can be in my PJs, and yes, I can jump on that meeting even though it's 11 p.m. Maybe you shouldn't be jumping on that meeting at 11 p.m. Maybe you should ask a colleague to get some of the main notes from that, and know that your colleague is there representing your team and you don't need to be there. So another thing that I've seen is people wanting to do it all, being like, oh, like, right, we can do all this. Look how productive we can be. But we are going to burn out if we continue to do that. People who've done this for a long, long time knows that. So it's also really looking at our work patterns, have some good rituals in terms of when do we step into work? When do we step away? When do we get our exercise? How do we create ways to still have a commute in our life, or some reflection times, downtime, get those shower ideas, like create that patterns, because just because we can, it doesn't mean we should be online all the time with our colleagues.
Lena, it's interesting you say that. So I have been remote for maybe a decade now, almost fully remote, and in the last 6 years, fully remote. And this migration was not a challenge for me or people like me who've been doing that. We figured out our work boundaries, right? I'm not going to say balance. I don't think there's work-life balance. I think there's work-life boundaries. And so I think we figured those out. We figured out that in order to be productive, we still have to brush our teeth and brush our hair, even though we're not going to look at anybody, right? We knew those things. But it occurred to me a few months ago that a lot of people are still struggling after 2 years of working this way. And I'm wondering if it is more a reflection of their leadership and the support given to them to work that way, or and I don't know if you I'd be interested to know if you see it a little bit differently, but like, if I just plop you down and say you can work remote, you're fine. But if my leaders aren't behind that or don't know how to do it either, am I suffering?
Yes. I think every time with leadership, good leadership is when those people are also role modeling and being very explicit about, hey, I found out what works for me is to have a structure and not just fall into PJ, I'm still at college, I'll just crunch this out when I need to, that kind of thing. Yes, there's a freedom in it. It's kind of like a novelty for a moment, but we're adults and we also need to have a life outside of our work. And we also want to show up great, refreshed, and eager to do the work when we are showing up and doing great collaboration with our colleagues. So I think modeling and being very explicit and have conversations, and even like inspirational conversation, pulling people in to share some of that, but also giving some guidelines around what are within some. Very rarely can you do it like company wide, but you can do it within departments, you can do it within teams, having good conversations around what are roughly our times when we can get hold of each other, and what channels are okay to get hold on each other through, right? Like, and having those kind of collaboration agreements and those conversations up front, so that we're making it very clear that people should create those boundaries, but they're themselves going to know, oh, I love to work early because then I'll take a morning run at 10 after after I'm done. So it's not like I want you to tell I can't work at 6, because it's great for me to work at 6, and then so that's what this new way of working has really opened up for, is how do we get all that flexibility in there, and also make sure that we guide people to create boundaries, that their workplace is a healthy container that they can design themselves.
Are you seeing in my news feed, what I'm seeing lately is an awful lot of, and I don't have a kinder word for it, but a lot of fear-mongering headlines that are telling millennials and the following generations that they just better not get used to working in their pajama pants, right? And they're telling them that flexibility is on its way out. Those days are done. Are you seeing the same thing? Is that a custom feed for me? Are you seeing some of the same news snippets coming your way?
I do think there is an older generation that wants that to be the truth, and who's also saying, yes, we're not at college, so it has to be serious, and therefore we can't necessarily just get it how we want and train for an Ironman as the weights at the same time as I'm having a career job, those kind of things, right? And I think there's a certain mindset where it becomes either or. So now you have to get back, and this is what work looks like. And I think that as we're now phasing out or of the pandemic, if we are, we don't know. Things are changing, right? Like, and we're definitely getting used to that. There's a certain way that we can't expect how we are working, and more hybrid is popping up. And the hybrid becomes that conversation of like, and different organizations do different things, right? Like I just work with a big company out of Sweden, where they're like, well, as an organization, we're deciding you can't do 100% remote, but you can, you have to have some sort of presence in the office, but within your team, you're designing what that office presence is, because we're going to do hybrid, and maybe that in your team is like once a month, or maybe it's 3 times a week. You have that conversation and figure out what works in your team, and then you settle on that for a period of time, and then it comes back up for a renegotiation, and you figure that out, right? So that's the beauty of hybrid, and that's what I see more and more becomes this actually what would you call it, like the compromise between the people saying we have to go back and that is how we do serious work, and the people's like, well, I just want to be remote forever and ever. Is the hybrid, right? And finding out, well, what are the ways that's beneficial for us to do in person, and let's then focus on when are those. Oh, that's our annual all hands on deck for the organization. We want that to be in person. Great. We want our monthly strategy conversation. That should be in person. But these other things we can do remote. Or as a team, we might say, oh, we definitely want Monday morning to be in person because there's something that happens in terms of how we plan the week. So that's how we do it, right? So it's those conversations I think are important, and not the fear mongering.
Yeah, because I think what I think I hear you saying is it's not those organizations who are saying you got to be here 3 days a week. You pick the days. That's just not enough. That's checking a box. That's making sure that the real estate we paid for gets utilized. That's just that's not being mindful of why they need to come into the office, or necessarily coordinating to make the most of the office time. Because I got to tell you, we know some folks who were forced to go back into the office, and they're back in the office doing Zoom calls. And it's making them a little crazy that their employers are checking card swipes, and they're making sure people are coming in the doors, but they're saying, look, I'm sitting in a cubicle all day long on a video call. I could have done this at home. I didn't even need to put pants on.
Exactly. So I think that's where I think there was a lot of organizations like, oh, when we can get back, let's get back X amount of days of the week, right? Yes, the real estate we have, and also because there's a portion of colleagues who really did not do very well online, and they needed to come back, right? Then there's also some sort of equality of like, there's people who have to be here because of productions or keeping the lights on, and it also fair that because they had to be here during the pandemic, now we're also back. So I think right now we're in this period where we're trying to figure out, well, what makes sense going forward. Because what I can see here, I'm based in Portland, Oregon, what I can see with several organizations here is like, oh, they had like 3 floors in an office building. Well, now they have 1 floor. And then they're starting to use different ways of coming together. There's a really cool new startup here, which is kind of like Airbnb, but for office spaces.
Okay.
And so it's like, oh, well, if you don't only have so many, now there's these amount of cubicles and these amount of office spaces, but now there's a budget for you to then hire, book meeting rooms or houses in Portland for you to do those in-person things that you want to do with your team. It doesn't have to be in the office, but you get back into hanging out together. So there is so I think that's some of the new things that's happening is like, oh, the company can say, great, we don't have to pay for all these square footage. We'll pay for a third of it, and then we'll use that momentum to start refining what does the people need. If they were trying to design our workspace as a coffee shop, well, they could just hang out in the coffee shop if that's what they want, and then we don't have to have a coffee shop, right? You know what I mean? Like, I think those changes are some of the things we're going to see.
It's a tough pill to swallow. I'll use the Bay Area because I lived out there for a number of years. It's a tough pill to swallow for organizations who have 5 buildings, right, or 20 buildings on this campus that they have built. I can absolutely hear the argument of all creativity goes, our culture gets damaged, but I'm sort of walking down a path of, the only way that happens is if you don't get innovative, if you don't get smart about how you change it. It's not about coming in 3 days a week. It's about what you're going to do, and be really, really mindful of what that in-office time should look like.
Yes, and I think that's a really important thing to kind of get at the heart of, because most of organizations, unless they were startups that grew out of being remote to begin with, but most other organizations have a culture that was built around an in-person presence and an in-person office. So some organizations feel a little desperate or lost, like, what happens with our culture if that's not who we are? And it's a great opportunity to go see, well, let's then look at what are some core values that's really central to us. What are some ways in terms of our product, in terms of the things that we want to change in the world, how we want to come together, what kind of colleagues do we want to pull in that we want to work together with. That's our culture. And that is now going to get built on and added to that culture that you had, but now it might be some sort of hybrid. And then I will encourage you to grab that kind of invitation to see what does that then look like as we're shaping a culture that's not necessarily just defined around the physical building that we're in.
Yeah, it seems to me there might be an opportunity for a product. I'm sure somebody's already doing this, but that is more than just a scheduling platform, but something internally that helps with a more meaningful schedule. I don't know what it looks like, but I feel like if I could do, what I mean? Like
Yeah, because one thing you're hitting at here, which is one thing that's very challenging around hybrid, is like, okay, well, I want to be in on those 2 days. My other colleagues want to be on this Thursdays. And they're like, great, now I'm here. And no one's here because they were here yesterday and they're not here today. So a big piece of hybrid is to be very adult and mature around the collaboration and the coordinating of when are we deciding that we're going to show up together. And yes, we want flexibility. Guess what? It's not a one-person gig. Like we have to be like, oh, if that works for my colleagues, then I'm going to come in on that day because that's what we decide works for us.
Or visibility. Do I have visibility into when my colleagues have already said they'll be in?
Exactly.
I'm more likely to connect with them.
There's a cool app called Cafe that actually does that. That gives that. It's kind of like it's a way of everyone can say, oh, well, today I'm working from remote and I'm going to see clients. So use to text my cell phone or WhatsApp because I'm going to be on the road. Today I am going to be working with this big presentation. Send me an email, but I'll only be checking it periodically. Or today I'm going to be in the office. I hope to see you around lunch in the cafeteria. So there's a way you can do that. Where can you find me? Even though I am different places, because it really is about where can I find you? You're my colleague. I need you today. I have a question. I'm sure you can help me. Where are you? Oh, I'll text you on WhatsApp and I get you. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Can we make the live meetings as easy as we've learned to make the virtual meetings?
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
So Lena, what's another resource? I mean, you mentioned Cafe, but are there any other resources that someone may be struggling to be their most productive self when working remotely should sort of check out to help with their productivity?
And this is one thing that actually came up when we had our lecture. There's I love to use 2 different apps that are helping me with my own personal productivity. I use what's called Cave Day, which is a community that goes in and do these kind of productivity slots together. So you're just kind of being helped of like turn off all your notifications. We're going to do sprints together for 2 hours or 1 hour, depending on what you sign up for. So that's a tool, Cave Day. I really like that community and what people do there together. It's not, you're not presenting anything but you're just kind of, you're stepping into a space and someone else is holding it for you. And then you just do those kind of, very concentrated, focused work, which is some of the things that a lot of us is missing because it gets so kind of fractured and we get pulled in many different directions. So that's where I get my most of my work done, and in those kind of productivity slots. So that's one tool that I use quite a bit. We were just talking about hybrid, and so this is not so much about, this is more about productivity as a team. With a government client here in the US that I worked with, that work came out to be we developed what's called a hybrid blueprint, like a way that you can use as a team as you're starting working together hybrid. The conversations that's important to kind of have to make sure you have a good platform for that hybrid that collaboration. Come on, some of these kind of negotiable pieces, like is this how we do it? Is this how we do? A lot around digital inclusiveness. Like how can we make sure that whatever happens, no matter if I'm at home or in the office, everyone in the team has that information, so I'm not left out. And because that's a big part about hybrid, it's like, oh, is it only the people who are in the office who suddenly gets the great juicy projects because they were around when the decision was made?
I mean, that's what everybody was saying, right? If they see you, they're getting work. If they don't see you, you're not getting the work. You're not getting the accolades.
Yeah, so that's important that we're aware of that bias around proximity, right? Like, oh, he's right there. He must be the great person for that. No. Actually, Lisette has had a lot of experience with that. She's not in as often. She works a lot remote. She might be the one who should do this, right? Even though I don't see her every day because she's only in once a month, right? So yeah, the hybrid blueprint that I developed, that's a great resource as well, if I may promote one of my own ones as well.
Absolutely. And it's at gleapconsult.com, right?
Correct. Yes.
Okay. Well, and there's another thing that you're also working on that seems pretty incredible to me. So before we go, I want to talk a little bit about it. And that's this future of work 24 hours. Can you talk a little bit about, we got a fancy, well, I'm going to throw a little fancy.
Oh, yes.
A little ticker on the bottom. But can you talk to us about that?
Thank you for asking. This is not my physical baby, but it's one of my babies. A colleague of mine, April Jefferson, and I started this project about 3 years ago. It just came out of a conversation, out of a passion of ours. We are both very passionate about what's called open space, like when you come together and create an agenda or a whole conference together over an overall theme, but you don't have keynotes, you don't have people that any schedule that's done ahead of time, but the people who show up and is interested, they create the agenda, throw in topics, host sessions together. So it's very organic, very self-organized. And Future of Work 24 Hours is where we once a year, it happened in May, it's going to happen in May again in 2023, we do that online for 500 people from around the globe. So it runs for 24 hours, so it hits everyone's time zones, and it's all volunteers. This year we had 60 volunteers who designed and curated and held that space for everybody.
I just think that's incredible. For those who are listening and not watching, the URL, it's futureofwork24hrs.space, futureofwork24hours.space. And it's free?
It's pay what you can. You can just show
okay.
up. Our tickets are $20, but you can also just so it's not like this is. I mean, we're not earning money on it. It's a passion project of ours. So it's where people discussing future of work, where they come with their problems, where they come with solutions they've had. They maybe have done research within this. They want to hear what other people have done. They want to share their own knowledge. So future of work is both around hybrid and remote collaboration, but it's also around doing very different ways, doing self-organizing pieces, splintering some of those hierarchies we typically have at work, doing things radically or not so radically, but a little bit different than what we maybe have always done.
I love it. I can't wait to check that out. Thanks, Lena.
You should.
Okay. So last thing, I've got to ask you a question. We ask it of all of our guests, Lena, around this topic. If you were going to write a book, and you may, I'm shocked you don't have a series of these, but if you were going to write a book on the topic, what would the title, what would the message, the title of the book be?
Oh my God. I did write a book in my previous career, so I've done it. But on another topic. Something around asynchronous sparks. Oh, yeah. Asynchronous sparks. So what happens when we don't have to be synchronous together? It doesn't have to happen right on top of each other, right at the same time. Mm-hmm. What sparks can happen when we're actually opening up for that space that I created a video to send to you. You thought about that. Then you added something in an online board. Some other of our colleagues added something in. It's percolating for a week, and then we're having a meeting synchronous together, and all those sparks come together to then a conversation. So yeah, asynchronous sparks.
That sounds like a productivity fireworks show is what.
Ooh, yes, that maybe be the subtitle to it.
All right, so I'm going to put you on the spot, as I love to do. Who gets the first signed copy?
Oh, my husband.
Oh, that's awesome.
He's the one who he thinks I'm a rock star. You know, why can you not love that?
Oh, that's fantastic.
He's my backup. He's always there. Yes.
All right. Well, then in that case, I'm not going to ask you what you would write. We'll leave that between the two of them. Lena, thank you so much for joining us. We're really excited that you cut time out of your super busy schedule to join us. We love the lecture series. I want to remind anybody, if you are a CXR member, you get full access in the library. It's you can find the lecture at cxr.works/lecture. If you are, and within that lecture, so obviously we have the 1 hour video, but we also have a list of resources that Lena shared with us. We'll add these resources that she's mentioned to that list. If you are not a CXR member and you want those list of resources, email me. It's chris@cxr.works. I will get you that full list. You can't see the video, that's for the members, but we will give you the full list of all the resources that she shared. And Lena, I just want to thank you again. You're just a rock star, and we're just so appreciative that you took the time out. Thank you so much.
Thanks for inviting me. Have a good one.
All right. Bye-bye. Hang out in the green room. We'll talk in just a second.
Thanks for listening to the CXR channel. Please subscribe to CXR on your favorite podcast resource and leave us a review while you're at it. Learn more about CXR at our website, cxr.works, facebook.com and twitter.com/careercrossroads, and on Instagram @careerxroads. We'll catch you next time.